All right. Okay. Let's go. Do something a little different today. Start out with something different. Radhe, Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe, 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 Govinda, Govinda, Radhe. Radhe, Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe, 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 Govinda, Govinda, Radhe. Radhe, Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe, 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 Govinda, Govinda, Radhe. Radhe, Radhe, Govinda, Govinda, Radhe, 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 Govinda, Govinda, Radhe. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, oh Krishna Krishna, Hare Jai, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Jai, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Jai, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Radhe Radhe Govinda Govinda Radhe 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 Govinda Govinda Radhe Namago Vishnu Krishna Prasthaya Utale Namago Vishnu Pataya Krishna Prasthaya Mutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Damini Tamine Snupataya, Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Namini Namaste, Namaste, Saraswati Deve, Gaurvani Pacha, Nene, Devasesha, Shunyavade, Vaschachade, Satarane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Jai, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Govinda Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya. Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, Radha Ramana, Hare Govinda Jaya Jaya. Radha Jayam Chandra, Jayam Chandra, Ate. Jaya Radha Madan Mohan, Madan Mohan, Haribo, 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 Nichai Gone. Jaya Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Chila Prabhupada. Chila Prabhupada, Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa Parvadikacharya, also Tada Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavanam Ki Jai. Maturnam Ki Jai. Jagadada Sami Ki Jai. Yamunamai Ki Jai. Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Budle Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Samadhi Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarne Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. Krishna consciousness is meant to be fun. Anyone who tells you different is a rascal. Joyfully performed. All right. What are we going to do? Today is our final session. Okay, thank you very much for the mala. Very nice. All right, so actually, for those of you who are still here after 3 days, who tolerated me for 3 days, we're going to distribute a piece of paper that has the summary of empathic communication. One side of one piece of paper, everything is there. How about that? I think we have enough for everybody. Okay, so yesterday we were talking about the 4 Ds of discommunication. I don't see the paper or the flip chart. Flip chart sort of disappeared. Okay, Great, thank you. Oh, all right. Actually, well, maybe we'll do some exercises about this. Is really interesting. Okay, first I'm going to describe the process of empathic communication because I don't know how much time we're going to have to go through everything. So the process of it, excuse me, of empathic communication is basically, oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. It's actually described here. Observation. It's just basically this in both directions. Observation, feelings, and needs. Okay, brief description of them because it's already 11 o'clock, 11:11. So observation means like a detective. Anyone know who a detective is or what a detective is? Detective means someone who works for the police force usually. And they're talking to you and they say, ma'am, just the facts, please. You'll say, that, and the lady will say, oh, this person was mean to me. And you'll say, that's not really what I'm asking for. That's your impression of him. He was mean. So what did he do? Well, he gave me bad tasting lemonade. I can say this about Siradhika. That she gives me really bad tasting lemonade. So she was mean to me. That won't go very far in court, right? Mean, if you tell the detective someone was mean, cruel, these are all like judgments. You got to be really specific. Okay. So specific would be, let's say the lemonade. She's a little gruesome. Anyway, she stuck my hand in the blender. Or she, let's say I was her child. She put, not in the blender, that's too much. That my mother put me in the dryer. That happens. There are things like that. Or like when they go to the emergency room, they'll ask you, how did you get burnt like this? Well, by the microwave or something like that. So, sorry about that. So people do things like that. People are really cruel sometimes. So basically, that's really specific. So when did she do it to you? Well, I dreamt about it. That doesn't. Well, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know when she did it. That really doesn't make it. You need to know when your mother did that to you. You have to look at your watch before she does that to you. And when, where, etc., like that. What, when, where, how, right? Why, that's not up to you to tell the detective. The why question is up to the interview, they interview your mother or whoever did something to you, right? So that's what an observation is. Okay, I'm going to do a test for all of you right now. Tell me if this is an observation right now. It's hot in this room. Is that an observation? Yes, no? No, he says no. Let's take a vote. Who says yes, it's an observation? Okay. I'm not going to vote. I'm just saying you should raise your hands if you think so. Who says no, it's not an observation? You changed your mind. You're uncertain. Right, uncertain. It's not an observation. What would an observation be? Any volunteers? What? Yes, 80 degrees. 80 degrees Fahrenheit in this room. I can say, I feel hot. I mean, that's practical. That's my feeling. But really, that's not really enough to do empathic communication. You have to have an observation. It's 85 in this room. Or another observation. Let's take another one. I'm really sweating. Is that an observation, or is it just a feeling or something? It's an observation, I'm observing that right now I'm sweating. So it's really important to understand that, because we often confuse judgments and feelings with observations. It's important to be objective with something that we see. And when you see something, then you connect it with your feeling. Like it's 80 degrees in here or whatever, or 82 degrees. And I am feeling hot. That's a feeling, right? What do I have a need for? Comfort. I mean, it's not that hot. I'm just making an example right now. So, very, very important. Like, observation should be based on time-bound, not, my mother always yells at you. What about Jiva? Does your mother always yell at you? That may be an observation. So, now, he's good. I like him. So anyway, no, an observation would be yesterday when I came home from school. What? Tell me if this is an observation. My mother yelled at me. Is that an observation? Why not? Yell is a judgment. Obviously he's not going to say, my mother said, you rascal, at 85 decibels. He's going to pull out his mobile phone. Does he have a mobile phone? Not yet. Does Gopinath have a mobile phone? Yeah. Every kid has to have a mobile phone. That's part of their samskara. Said nowadays when someone gets a certain age, you don't give them chalk or anything like that, or a pencil. It's going to school. You have a whole fire sacrifice. And say, this is now, in the middle of the fire, now you get your mobile phone, right? So, when you get older, you'll get a mobile phone. Is that nice? 2 more years. Really? I mean, I had one when I was 3 years old. Not really. They didn't have mobile phones then. Very good. So, anyway, it's not an observation. Yelling is not an observation. It's a judgment. An observation would be, my mother said, you rascal. And I felt, just taking his position, I felt angry. What if I say, I felt she was a rascal? Is that a feeling? Anybody? I felt that she was a rascal. It's not a feeling. Feelings are something from the heart. Here's the feelings. Right here. And right here. So every time your mother does something, Jiva, you should just go through all these lists. Does he read now? Can he read these? So next time your mother does something that aggravates you, you go through the list. But this one, afraid, aggravated, agitated, alarmed, aloof, angry, anguished, annoyed, just read off the whole list to her. and she'll get the message. Ashamed, beat, bewildered, bitter, blah, blue, bored, broken. Here's a good one for you. Broken-hearted. Next time your mother chastises you, use this one. Here's another one I can pick for you. Horrified. Horrified. The dull one, you can feel dull. What's another funny one? Wretched. So, I mean, this is basically it. Observations. All right, let's ask for some examples from all of you. Can you come up with an observation, a pure observation? Anybody? Red and white garland. Yes. I mean, practically speaking, from a Krishna conscious perspective, you would say your physical body has around its neck. You really want to get specific, because wearing could be, an ear garland. Right? Around the neck of your physical body, your material body, there is a red and white flower. There are red and white flowers. And this was at 11:22 in the afternoon, in the morning, right? That's an observation. So who else has an observation? Yeah. All right.
You told 20 jokes during these 2 hours, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. How do you know they were jokes? That's your judgment. Oops. There goes my... So, isn't it? You think about it, a joke. Because maybe I was really serious, and you all laughed at something I was serious about. We do that all the time. Okay. Okay.
I was going to say that I'm observing that all the lights on this side of the room are switched on while it's bright daylight. And I have some feelings connected.
Yeah, that's an observation. That's good. All the lights. Let's see if you got it right. Yeah, they're all on. So that's good. So, who has another? Just someone who is not too familiar with. Yeah. There were 2 what? Pigeons inside the temple door.
In front of the temple door at 10 in the morning.
Okay. And you're sure there were pigeons and not crows or anything like it?
That was my observation.
Sure, as long as you went close to them and checked to make sure they were pigeons. Were they male pigeons or female pigeons?
I don't know. No.
Okay.
Yes.
But 2 regular pigeons. Okay. Okay. Here we go, another.
Maharaj, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
So when you were asking Gopal Hari Prabhu, are you sure they're pigeons? So when we say the observations, is there any judgment or understanding saying this is the observation?
Well, there always has to be a little bit of judgment. Pigeons, your definition of pigeons may be different than my definition of pigeons. Or your definition of the color of Bidoti or the color of the garland may be different because these aren't pure red. I mean, you can really get into, picayune stuff. This is not quite red. There's a combination red, and there's a little yellowish type of thing here, and then white, and then there's green over there. So you don't want to, I'm joking about these things when I get too specific about it. But there's always something connected to, let's say, our conditioning. Because what you call a pigeon, what I call a pigeon in Hindi, what is the name of a pigeon in Hindi? What? Kaputa. That just means bird, doesn't it? Or it's a specific. Because in Sanskrit, kaputa and kaputi, you had the female and the male. Anyway, in Sanskrit, that's how you do it. So, all right, so anyway, there's always a certain amount, obviously, of judgment. You say that a man came in the room. How'd you know it was a man? Maybe it was like a cross-dresser, or a woman came in the room. Maybe it was a man in drag. I don't know. So there's a certain amount of guessing, but you try to get it as close. That's actually a good question. I never had that question before. So try to get as close as possible to what a detective would accept. Just the facts, the time, when it happened, and avoid always or never, absolute terms like that. And all right, so that's what an observation is. And then we get into feelings, which are really interesting, these two lists here. And feelings are just from the heart. So you see a list here of the feelings, and feelings are never expressed like, I feel like you're a jerk. I feel like you're happy. I feel like, isn't it? I feel like you're useless. I feel like I'm happy. Yeah, I feel like you don't care. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a disconnect. Now, it's not bad when you say, I feel like you don't care, then you can jump to this. So what did I do? Or what did I do? What did you observe? Like if someone says to me, I feel like you hate me. You get that all the time. And then you say, what did I say? And I said, I said you made a mistake. I said, phew. And so you are feeling angry or, whatever these needs are not met thing. You're feeling frustrated or frightened or brokenhearted. It's not appropriate for a sannyasi. So you're feeling terrified. So I may actually guess at it or ask, so what was the feeling in your heart when I said that you made a mistake? Okay. I felt, whatever I felt. Let's pick one right here. Because the need, obviously, if someone comes up with a statement like, I feel you hate me or something like that, that means some need is not being met. So it's not bad to express feelings, to express yourself like that. It just indicates you have to go further into this whole process of observation and feelings. And then, after they reveal their feelings, they can say, they know empathic communication. You can ask them, so what was your need? Otherwise, you can say something like, so, you have a need for understanding. And they'll say, yes. So but that's a very, what we call Vaidhi way of expressing empathic communication. Vaidhi means just, the rules and regulations. It's not that you actually do that exactly like that, because if you tell them what their feelings are, if you tell them what their needs are, they'll probably get more upset with you. So you sort of guess, you sort of guess and say, is it that you have a need for understanding? And the interesting thing is, if they accept this sort of analysis, and people oftentimes get frustrated with this whole process anyway, what they will do is you'll see a release in bodily tension. You got to be very much aware of people's body language. Like, because obviously, if someone feels that you don't like them, it's gonna be a tension in the body. Just giving an example. There's a tension in the body. I feel you don't like me. The sort of shoulders will hunch up and things like that. And as soon as they feel a connection, which is really what their basic need is, a connection and understanding, which is part of connection, then it's like, yeah. So you can actually perceive that in people. Although, generally, if there's really strong emotions, you may have to just be empathic non-verbally. In other words, in your mind, you try to understand what their feelings are and their needs are. It's pretty obvious in most cases, but that requires you to observe their physical manifestation. Does everybody understand? Because it's really intrusive if you just keep telling people, are you feeling this because you have a need for this? And people will just get angrier at you. Are you using that empathic communication on me again? Stop it, stop analyzing me. This is driving me, your empathic communication is driving me crazy. Now, I had some discussions with Braja Bihari, who he has professional training in mediation and conflict resolution, as you all know. And he went to the university for that. And he said you could always tell someone who was studying nonviolent communication, which is basically my adaptation of nonviolent communication is called empathic communication. Adaptation for Krishna consciousness. So you could always tell, because they would always approach you and say, are you feeling because you have a need? And it would drive people bananas. Can you imagine? I said, stay out of my life already. Right? Just like, what are you doing? So this is basically the process of empathic communication in a nutshell. And it's important to develop a vocabulary of feelings, especially feelings. Needs are much more concise. They're easy to remember. Autonomy, celebration, you got all these subcategories here. Interdependence, that means with other living entities. And there's also independence, interdependence, and independence. And of course, there's Krishna consciousness, which I should have listed here. But this is actually not my chart. I made the chart up, but I didn't put up in Krishna consciousness. It's just like beauty, reciprocation, reciprocation can actually be under here. Order, inspiration, and peace, but actually it should be KC. And then physical nutrients. So all feelings are connected with needs. Remember that. All feelings, all actions, at all times. That way you can be, if you really integrate this into your consciousness, you can be empathic with anyone. Even people who you would consider to be demons. Okay, let's take a demon, for example. Robin. You all know Robin? So, has any parent ever named their kid Robin? What was that funny name this morning you told me? What?
Kara.
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 Kara. one parent named their child Kata, which means what? Ass. Like in Bhagavatam, sa eva Gokara. Can you imagine naming your child, please come here, my dear ass. My dear jackass, It's like calling your child a jackass in English. What's your child's name? Jackass. So anyway, donkey, right? Or donkey. All right, so let's get back to the example. Okay, here's Robin. Poor Robin. He is kidnapping all these girls, not satisfied. He has a fantastic wife, Mandodari, who's so chaste, she hasn't asked for a divorce yet. She's a traditional Vedic wife, like all of you ladies should be in relationship to your husbands. No matter what the husband is, even if he's a Rakshasa, he kidnaps other girls, brings them home. Just say, honey, you're so wonderful. Anyway, so Mandodari, can you imagine that? It's hard to imagine. Actually, you put yourself in Mandodari's shoes and look at the world from her vision. Here's your husband. and he's getting drunk every night, right? Comes home with a different girl every night. He gets married to them. And he has all these kids from all these different girls. And oh my God, Robin. So anyway, and then finally he kidnaps Sita Devi. So what's his problem? All right, so let's put yourself, you're married to Robin and he's doing all these things. So how would you use empathic communication?
Go for it.
When you brought your 100th wife home this morning,
Yeah.
Are you feeling joyful because you have a need for love, connection, some
I think
excitement?
you're trying to find fault in me. Using that I'm taking Robin's position. Using that mushy-gushy stuff you learn from the Hare Krishnas. No, anyway. So basically, you don't have to go through the whole process. You took the 100th girl home with you. So what do you think his needs are? Any guesses? What?
He has a need for fun.
Yeah, he has a need for fun. He has a need for connection, appreciation. Because another thing that he does is he spends half of his other time bragging about himself. I'm Lankeshwara. Isn't it? Yogeshwara, Lankeshwara. He's bragging about himself. So we would say his false ego is very big. That's a judgment. But actually, the poor guy is suffering. He's experiencing a lot of these different emotions because his needs are not being met. He's anxious, he's annoyed, he's anguished, he's aloof, he's bewildered, he's not frightened, he's disturbed. All these emotions. Probably a good portion of these emotions he's experiencing at this point. And those are his feelings. And so he has a need for connection and appreciation and love. And so, I don't know if I use this as an example. All right, and I will in a second. So that's really why he's acting the way he is. So we can be empathic with him. We can think that his strategy stinks. Strategy is horrible, unacceptable, irreligious. You can use all these words. We should use some judgment in Krishna consciousness. Not that I'm saying you throw out judgment. Nothing's adharmic, everything is nice. That's hippie philosophy. But his strategy is horrible. But his feelings and needs are perfectly understandable. So hopefully you don't get upset with me for this example. So, what politician would be very similar? Oh my God. I'm not talking about his policies right now, because I don't want to aggravate anyone. But isn't there a modern day politician that remain nameless? You know, what's that saying? He who cannot be named. Anyone know where that comes from? Yeah. Not Lord of the Rings. It comes from another movie. Harry Potter. And his name, what was his name? Voldemort, right. Yeah, there's this movie, Harry Potter. Some of you are educated enough to have seen it. Others are just like naive and like uneducated. So here, you know, we won't mention his name because we're in front of the deities. And so he basically has the same needs, isn't it? He's like, and when you have those needs, I mean, psychologically, you become really regressed. You know what a regressed person is? Yeah. Okay. He's
Maharaj,
a Republican. Hopefully you're not a Republican. Anyway, so.
now I have a question about Ravan.
Yeah.
You said he has a need for joy and connection.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, he has a facility for joy and connection already. So we can say that his need, whatever arrangement he has, need
Yeah.
is not fulfilled and he's trying hard.
Well, his strategy is really bad, because if he connected with the good wife that he has, he would find that.
Okay.
But he's not recognizing, you know, the wealth that he has with Mandodari. You know, here's someone who really cares for him. Generally, this is a joke I usually use, but generally the other wives married him because he's so handsome. Like I mentioned sometimes in my seminars about Ravana, a seminar about Ravana, that any of you ladies, if Ravana were to come right now and say, come with me, you would gladly drop your regular husband. Because, you know, who needs this puny guy who has to go to work every day? You know, he's bald, you know. Has to work, he's still driving around in a car with a cracked windshield on. You also have to work a job to pay all the payments and everything like that. I mean, here's someone who's rich, famous. I mean, just like you see, that sometimes there's some very rich and famous people, and they, even though, you know, the guy is like 90 years older than the girl. I mean, that happened in the case of, there was a Jacqueline Onassis, or Jacqueline Kennedy before. She was married to President Kennedy. So because he passed away, you know, he was assassinated. And then she found this older Greek shipping, what we call magnate, who was very rich, and she married him, and obviously he died very quickly after that. So what I'm saying is Ravana, I mean, he was an attractive person. Rich, famous, strong, isn't it? Powerful in every way. So, anyway, didn't want to glorify Ravana, but I did. So he had some basic needs. So it's a question of recognizing his needs, or if I was with him, I would talk to him very sincerely. I would say, Robin, I really like you. I want to connect with you. And then maybe I would be able to help him. Maybe. Of course, he had a pastime, I understand, with the Supreme Lord. But you can really help people who are just really suffering. And anyone who's exhibiting these emotions, there's some suffering connected with them. You know, apathetic, it means no feeling. Apprehensive, ashamed, they're not pleasant. They're not pleasant. They're not bad. Those emotions are not bad because they indicate that we have a need that should be met. It's not that we get rid of the emotions and we take some antidepressant or something. You know, some people, they have emotions. For example, they'll go to the psychiatrist. You going to leave now? Too bad. All right. So they'll go to the psychiatrist and they'll take some antidepressants, and that will cover. I'm not saying we shouldn't take antidepressants. In certain cases, they're extreme. The person's extremely depressed, so they have to do something like that. I'm not saying don't take those things, but they'll go to the psychiatrist and take antidepressants, and it'll actually cover up their real need. Sometimes it's physiological. I understand that. But in most cases, there's a real need they have. There's a real need they have, and that's why they're feeling depressed. And most psychologists don't really understand that. And psychiatrists don't understand that simple point. And there's one who took a lot of this information from. His name is Maslow, who did understand that point. He has quite a few good insights into human psychology. Anyway, so yes, you have some questions.
Maharaj, just a follow-up on that. In addition to the needs of joy and connection, could it also be that, I don't know what exactly is the need, like autonomy, feeling powerful, whatever he wanted to do, he wants to do? Is it all?
There could be the need for autonomy. There's not a need for feeling powerful. That's a feeling. Feeling powerful. Why? Because I have a need for protection, or I have a need for autonomy.
Yeah, I was thinking if it is just a joy and connection, he could as well go to Mandodari or 100 others, whoever are already there. But he wants okay, I want to go there, and whoever I want, I just want them, kind of a thing. I'm just trying to see for ourselves, could it also be like multiple needs can be there? And
Yeah, needs are not, that's a very good point. There's many needs that act together. Another point that I didn't mention so far is that when you're making a strategy to fulfill your need, you have to be careful that strategy doesn't interfere with the fulfillment of another need. So you have to be really intelligent in figuring out a strategy. If I have a need, for example, for autonomy, to choose one's dreams, goals, and values, and I say, well, I'm just going to make my own Hare Krishna movement. It's going to be called the Krishna Goswami Society for Krishna Consciousness, BCON. I've had enough of all these problems in the GBC, having to follow, all these different regulations, having to wash the temple president's feet to get a recommendation for initiation or something. Sometimes, some temples it's like that. If you want a recommendation to initiate someone, you have to really tiptoe around the temple president, give him all your Guru Dakshin. I'm not saying it's like that here, but I've experienced interesting things like that around ISKCON. So therefore, what is this? I'm not going to be controlled anymore. I'm independent. I want to choose my plan for fulfilling my dreams, goals, and values here. Okay, Bikon ki jai. And let me hire a professional person to actually, put together my website and everything like Bikon, the Krishna Goswami International Society of Krishna, B-Icon or something. So I have to brand it. Actually, we're very much into branding. Like I actually had a professional person seriously do a brand for me. It's like a beautiful brand. Anyway, she did it for free. So let's say I do Bcon, then I've lost a lot of these needs, the fulfillment of a lot of these needs right here. Especially my connection with what Prabhupada's desire is. It's interesting, you find people, this is a real life scenario, because you do find people who leave ISKCON to make their own movement. It's happened after Prabhupada left the planet. But really, I don't think they can really be happy. Because they know inside the Prabhupada said, you really love me, you'll stay within this movement and cooperate and help this movement. The disciples of Prabhupada know that. I mean, that's been ingrained in our consciousness. So your integrity is just like, There's a big need for integrity. And your self-worth is sort of being threatened at that particular point. Am I right? When you do something that your Guru Maharaj doesn't want you to do, I'm not talking about little things, don't worry about it. But then, especially like big things like making your own movement, Prabhupada's not pleased with me for Bcon. So therefore, I'm fulfilling that. I'm doing great with this need, but horrible for this need. And so I'm still disturbed. And you'll see that when people do that, specifically that example, there is some anger generally within them. And that anger may manifest as some political statements, a bitterness. Like there's a bitterness. Yeah, actually bitterness. That's the right, isn't it? That we've seen, because I have a lot of experience dealing with people who left ISKCON and made their own preaching outside of ISKCON. And disciples of Prabhupada. This is not to criticize anyone outside of ISKCON who started Krishna consciousness outside of ISKCON. They have their relationship with Krishna and their individual gurus. I appreciate that. But, I lost my integrity. I haven't, but hopefully. So that's an example of how you really have to consider holistically all these needs. Can someone else come up with another practical example? Yeah.
I was thinking when the empathic communication happened between Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad conversation, right? So, and that, the feeling, what he had, Hiranyakashipu had that feeling, and then that's where something happened, anger, and he tried to kill him. So I was thinking if you can take that example and if you can explain, that might be, maybe I can easily understand.
Okay, the feeling of...
The whole thing, if you see, like the observation we can observe, but the own feeling and needs.
With who? I didn't quite get that.
The Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad conversation.
Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj. You want me to go through Hiranyakashipu's feelings or Prahlad Maharaj's?
Because see, there is actually other feeling and own feeling. So the own feeling comes on Hiranyakashipu. The other feeling is Prahlad.
Okay.
Thinking that way.
Okay. So... All right, analyze Prahlad Maharaj. That's going to be different. I can analyze demons pretty well. When you ask for pure devotees, it's kind of a stretch for me. But I can try. So he's observing, that's easy. My father has thrown me into a pit of serpents. My father has thrown me off a cliff. My father has thrown me, what else? Under the feet of elephants. My father has put me in a vat of burning ghee, not ghee, oil. Yeah, he wouldn't use ghee. Vegetable oil. So my father, you know how temples sometimes get these big stocks of vegetable oil? It just says vegetable oil. You don't know what vegetable it is. You know, God knows what vegetable they make it. Isn't it? I would never buy vegetable oil. Right? I want to see what type of oil. You know, you can make oil out of anything. Okay. So, you know, and even in India, fish are sometimes considered vegetables. Fruit of the sea, right? Kangapal, fruit of the sea. So anyways, all right, so observation. And Prahlad Maharaj, from his perspective, I don't think he was feeling afraid because he had firm faith in Krishna. And so his need was for the welfare of his father. I mean, that's a pure devotee, if I had to analyze it. So what he did, his strategy was to tolerate. He didn't pray for his father to be killed. I mean, there's no indication that that happened. But he tolerated, like, I think Haridas Thakur would be similar to that particular situation. He had a need for the people who were torturing him. In 22 marketplaces, you know, they were beating him like that. And he was praying for their benefit, and he made himself unconscious and apparently dead for their benefit. So I think when you're dealing with a Vaishnava, the need for compassion, just sort of like, and love, just overwhelm everything else. I mean, if you had to, I mean, I'm not a Vaishnava, so I don't really know, but I would assume it was that. You know, and he just basically could sacrifice because he's so absorbed in Krishna. He has his internal life and relationship to Krishna. The other things may not be so consequential for him. You know, Prabhupada definitely had a need for autonomy. I mean, even so much so that when his parents wouldn't give him 2 water pistols or something like that, or guns, he kept hitting his head on the ground when he was a kid. You know the story? So, you know, Prabhupada had a real need for autonomy. But anyway, I mean, I would think that with a pure devotee, this is just my speculation because I don't know, anyway, I don't know the mind of a pure devotee. And it says one shouldn't try to understand the mind of a pure devotee. I would say that, you know, that his need for compassion and love and helping people is just like is overwhelming. You know, Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnava. You know, so he's an ocean of compassion, which means it's endless. And so, you know, that's why you see the Goswamis practically not resting at all, living under a different tree every day, not concerned with their shelter. And you know, they don't go to the gym. You know, you contrast that with me, you know, I exercise every day, I don't go to the gym, but, you know, I have exercise machines at home. I have a nice place, I cook for myself every day. Wherever I go, I send my recipe out. You know, I use WhatsApp and I send what I eat, what I don't eat. You know, I'm very much into this, personally. Make sure I get enough rest. I get a room with a private bathroom, you know, proper water. You know, I'm very demanding. So I can't really understand a pure devotee like Prahlad Maharaj. And I'm very demanding for peace and inspiration, order. Everybody has to be on time, no Indian Standard Time. I like things that are attractive, not ugly. So forget it, so how can I possibly understand a pure devotee when I'm really into my needs? But it's interesting too, that sometimes if someone talks about their needs, we may call them what? Needy. That's sannyasi, that pure Krishna Maharaj. He's a very needy person. But we have to be practical. We are not, speaking of myself, we are not like on the level of Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Srila Prabhupada. We have to be practical. If we don't fulfill these needs, we're not going to be able to progress in Krishna consciousness. We're not on that level. Like you hear in Prabhupada's books, there's the Anamoya platform, the Pranamoya platform, Jnanamoya platform, right? Also Manamoya, Jnanamoya, Vijnanamoya, Anandamoya. Who here is on the Anandamoya platform? Should I define the platforms? Okay. First one is Pranamoya. Many people are just on the Pranamoya, just like important, whatever you touch, like little children, little babies. This is from Shastra. I'm not making this up. Little babies, they're into, you got to hold them, rockabye, baby on the treetop, like that. And, you find that good parenting means attachment parenting. Like one of my disciples, really nice kids, she walked around with the kids attached to her for 2 years. But then they got too heavy. Now one of her children weigh a lot more than me. She can't walk with him anymore. So anyway, that's Pranamoya. And that's the beginning stage. Then connected with that, of course, is Anamoya, where the food, Anamoya, where food is really important. And many people, that's how we make devotees. Because most people are, for a large extent, on the Anamoya platform. What do we call the Sunday? We don't call it a Sunday program. We may call that. We call it the Sunday feast. Right? The love feast. And so when you say love feast, people go, And generally, most of the people come right before the feast is served. My experience is, giving a Sunday feast lecture, you start and there's 2 people watching you, Somehow or other you have to get enthusiastic with only 2 people watching you. And then after a while, they start to peter in, and by the time it's time for prasadam, it's a packed room. And then enthusiastically everyone says, what, Sharira Vijajaja Tandiya Tehikalatu Valaya Vishaya Sagare Dharmadeji Vayati Lobamari Saturi. Jai Mahaprasad. Your class, everybody will clap for it, because you have to do that. But I've been in the movement long enough to know how it works. So that's the Anamoya platform. And Prabhupada said, you all join because of nice tasting prasadam. Prabhupada had his magic thing called the ISKCON bullet. What was that? It was a glubjaman. Prabhupada kept a big barrel of glubjamans in the temple. And there was one time, one devotee, he passed a rule that each devotee could only eat 1 glubjaman a day. And they went to Prabhupada to complain about it. And Prabhupada said, he can only eat 1 glubjaman a day. Everybody else can eat as much as they want. So you see everyone, and I remember the Sunday feasts, in the old days, it was really opulent. Everything was cooked in ghee. Everything. We had Malpura for every Sunday, Malpura, glubjamans, puris fried in ghee, and You're already getting hungry. Everyone here is starting to salivate right now. But anyway, puris and samosas. Yeah. Yeah, all of us, sweet rice, kheer. I mean, this was, wow. It was like going to heaven. And so everyone looked forward to the Sunday feast. And in myself, I would just, like, after the Sunday feast, and a lot of the guests would leave the globulins over on their plate because they couldn't figure out what to do with them. So I would go around to the guest plate and pick out all the globulins. Because Prabhupada said prasadam never gets contaminated. So I had faith in that. So, you begin Krishna consciousness on the Anamoya platform. And then after Anamoya, then you get to the Manamoya, the mental platform. So the Manamoya platform. And then after the Manamoya platform, you get to the Jnanamoya, where you're getting knowledge. You're really into quoting a lot of verses. Oh, I know so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita, and I can defeat you. I mean, it's really interesting to find different discussions between devotees, and they just have verse wars. And I just say, oh my God. Throwing one verse, yes, I'm right. It says this in the Bhagavad Gita. No, you're wrong. It says this by Jiva Goswami. And oh my God. And then after the Jnanamoya, then there's a Vijnana, which is realization. What is that? Raja Vidya Rajaguyam Pavichami Damuttamam Pataksha Bhagavam Dharam Sushikam. Pataksha. So one by direct experience, the Bhagavad Gita says. So that's Vijnana. And then after the Vijnanamoya platform, the realization platform, then you have the Anandamoya, which is bliss. And that's the highest platform of Krishna consciousness. So getting back to your point, the pure devotee, he's on the Anandamoya platform. So we don't analyze Prahlad Maharaj, which I just attempted to do. And so here's Hiranyakashipu right now. Okay. He's another. I'm not Hiranyakashipu, so I wouldn't go here. So Hiranyakashipu, you observe what he did. And what is he feeling? I don't know. So guess. Someone guess what? Insecure, like Ravana was. He's feeling insecure. His brother, he has a right to be angry. He's feeling angry because his brother was killed by that Vishnu person. Lord Boar. Lord Boar killed his brother. So, yeah. So now, actually, I'm getting more empathic with Hiranyakashipu now, because he had a right to be angry. Bitter. Yeah, he was feeling bitter, angry, resentful, hostile. Also, maybe a little jealous. Maybe a little jealous there. And what were his needs? This is a hard one. Yeah. That's under interdependence. Yeah, he wants Prahlad to be loyal to the family. Loyal to the family. And he wanted the support. Support, that's loyalty right there. He needed the support from Prahlad Maharaj. And trust. And understanding of his position. Because Prahlad Maharaj maybe he understood, but he didn't reflect that understanding. Because when Hiranyakashipu asked him, what is the best thing you learned in school? He said, basically, you should take Vanaprastha. Matirna Krishna Paratos Vatova. You're just chewing the already chewed, Dad. Punak Purnas Charvita Charvananam, like that famous verse is. So he didn't feel that support, trust, or understanding from Prahlad Maharaj. And he didn't feel that love or consideration. Right? So those were his problems. So how to address it, I don't know. How to calm the poor demon down, I don't know. But really, to see someone as a demon rather than understanding their feelings is not the topmost platform in understanding someone. I mean, sometimes for practical purposes, we have to call someone a demon. Like Hitler was definitely a demon. I'm not deviating from that understanding. And actually, to be more precise, he acted demoniacally. Let's use process language. He acted demoniacally. But ultimately, according to the Krishna conscious philosophy, even someone like him is a devotee. Ultimately, because Jivara Swarupohai Nitya Krishna Das, that's our philosophy. So, but it's really a hard stretch to come to that conclusion. But philosophically, philosophically it is true. Okay, anyone else you want to analyze here? Yeah. Oh, we got one.
Maharaj, this is a basic question, and maybe you answered this before. But why assume? I'm happy that it's this way, but I'm curious, as someone could bring up the point that, why assume that the needs are all good? Like in the case of Ravana, people, psychopaths, they have the need to torture others.
That's not a need.
A need to control.
A need to have, it's not a need to control, but a need for autonomy is good. It's just the strategy that one takes. We don't have a need to control everything. We have a need to control our own lives, yes. That's autonomy. But I don't have a need to control you. Just like someone who's married can say to his wife, I have a need to control you. It doesn't work like that. We have a need to set our own lives and control our own lives and make our own decisions. Choose one's plan, my plan for fulfilling my dreams, goals, and values. So let's say you have two people who are together, whether a marriage situation or whatever, and your plans for fulfilling your dreams, goals, and values are different than the other person's plans. What do you do? Does anyone have an idea? You think outside the box. I mean, there's an example, I think it was Marshall Rosenberg who gave this example, that one person, he wants to go to the beach, the man wants to go to the beach and go swimming, and the lady wants to go snow skiing, And so those appear to be contradictory. They don't work out together because if you go swimming, usually you can't go snow skiing at the same time because of different climates and everything like that. So they thinking outside the box, they decided to go to a resort that had an inside swimming pool. So the man could swim and the lady could ski. So that's called thinking outside of the box, or what they call in conflict resolution, win-win. Because conflict resolution means basically that that you think you have a conflict of needs, but their conflict is in your strategies rather than your needs. Needs usually don't conflict. Strategies do. So you got to change your strategy to something that's not conflicting. When you have a conflict between two people. But this is all in reference to an individual. And it is no one's business to fulfill any of these needs for me. Except when you're a child, obviously the mother has to fulfill the need for food and all these other things for the child. But as an adult, hopefully, that I should not, if I demand, remember we talked about the 4 Ds of discommunication, right here? Here's demand. You know, if I demand and deserve, okay, this is a big one in, actually all these, when dealing with 2 people who live together, like husband and wife, that, you know, I've been working all day long, I deserve for you to cook for me. And that's also a demand. Actually, it comes out the same. You know, and then, and also, you know, the wife may say, you know, you don't respect me, you don't appreciate me. You hear these things so many times. There was once a famous comedian who actually just made his whole series of jokes about not getting appreciated. Anyway, famous comedian, and very old. None of you would know him. So basically, we demand these things of people. You know, a guru can demand these things of disciples too. You should write your offering for my Vyas Puja book. Tell me how much you love me. The guru arranges for his own publication of his Vyas Puja book. So he's demanding it, and then you feel you have to, right? You know, that's what a demand feel is some request, not a request, but something you ask someone, or someone asks something of you, that you feel you have to do it, and if you don't do it, you're going to get in trouble. You know, that often happens in the guru-disciple relationship too, that you demand different things. Anyway, not to criticize any particular guru-disciple relationships, but in other words, we have to be, there's our need for autonomy again. Where is that need? Anyway, the need for autonomy. Oh yeah, he's right here. The need for autonomy, we have to be autonomous enough to fulfill these particular needs, utilizing our strategies. That doesn't mean we don't interact with other people, but we just have to choose. Like I mentioned previously that sometimes people have a relationship and they think the other person's business is to fulfill all their needs. Like, you know, the man may have a need for sporting activities and fun, so he should have his own friends and go out and play cricket. And the women should go and knit or something. Knit little booties or something like that. That's a stereotypical concept of ladies. They belong in the kitchen. So anyway, so you know, it's so a good relationship is when you have good boundaries. You know, certain things you work together with and certain things you don't work together with. You know, everybody has to have their own life too. It's not that, you know, people get married and they're just one in every respect. You know, you just want one of those robots that you can unplug and turn off at night, you know. It doesn't work like that. We should be independent. And that's, I mean, in my own life, that's made me happy. Understanding that I really am not dependent on anyone else for these basic needs. I mean, of course, for Prabhupada, I'm dependent on Prabhupada, but I'm not just bothering Prabhupada every minute about everything I need. I'm not bothering Krishna either. Like Prabhupada said that the only thing he ever asked his spiritual master was what? Anyone know? How can I serve you? He wasn't asking Prabhupada, like, what color are the trees in the spiritual world? Does it, had devotees asking Prabhupada all these weird questions like, does it snow in Goloka Vrindavan? They're just trying to use Prabhupada as their need-fulfilling agent or their emotional focus. But we should have a relationship of service to Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual master, of course. So, because otherwise it becomes, you have these people who just like emotionally like drain you. It's just like, it's one thing to have a kid, you have to give all your love and attention to a kid, but if your kid is 50 years old, and still, oh, do you love me? Oh. Then it can be emotionally draining because we're actually demanding something from someone. But when someone does something voluntarily, it's very blissful and very, very nice. That's love. So, any other points? But yeah.
So just then a follow-up on that is, so in this chart, what is the place for, you could say, plain evil behavior? Like in the case of Ravana or Magrari, who was half killing the animals, where does the evil strategy come from? It doesn't seem that comes from he needed, others need food also, but there's also an evil behavior, an evil strategy that may be outside of a need. Where is that coming from in this picture?
It comes from a misplaced strategy. You just don't know what you don't know what your need is, and you come up with the wrong strategy. I mean, in the case, it also comes from conditioning. We're conditioned to have certain strategies. Like in the case of Magrari, Narada Muni asked him, "Why do you do this?" He says, "Because that's what my father taught me. That's the way my father did it." So you often find that, with people, let's say people eat meat. Why do you eat meat? Well, we've always eaten meat. That's the way my parents trained me up. I'm used to it. Generally, we're attracted to food that we got fed when we were young. Of course, we may not be attracted to food that we were forced to eat when we were young. And I remember in my own case, I was forced to take what's called beetroot soup, which in the culture has brought up and is called borscht. Anyway. And after I grew up, after I grew up, what I did is I just couldn't tolerate the sight of it. And it took me 50 years to be able to eat it again. And then my brother was even more strategic. My mother would try to feed him things that he didn't want to eat, so he developed a chipmunk strategy. Because he kept everything in his cheeks. So by the end of the meal, he looked like that. And he just made sure he went to the bathroom and opened his mouth on top of the toilet, and everything came out. So when you're forced to do something, that's another thing. But generally, we're conditioned. Yes, we're conditioned souls. We're conditioned to certain patterns of behavior. And we have to be told there's another strategy for fulfilling those needs. We need to be facilitated. We need to use our intelligence. We have so many different strategies that are not productive to fulfilling all these different needs. Okay? One has to be inventive, one has to be innovative, and in that way, one can be happy. I've tried to do that myself in Krishna consciousness, I realized I had other needs, such as as everyone can see, I have the ability, I'm not the ability, but the need just to be autonomous, different than everybody else. And so I'm basically acting that out right now in front of all of you. You say, you're different. I say, that's great. The best praise that someone can give me is not that you're a good devotee, which is not praise, actually. But they say, when people say, you're like a regular human being. I said, wow, thank you. If someone really wants to praise me, I like that. If someone says, you're so spiritual, you're so great, no, Hare Krishna. But you're a human being. You're regular. It means, wow, I get to express my feelings, my needs, and be normal. I don't want to play a role. Playing a role means you have no sense of autonomy. You can't celebrate. You're not authentic. Right? You can't have fun or laugh. Think about this. When you join a religious society, you have a role to play. You get some acceptance and appreciation. And community, not real closeness. It's all based on your role. All the world's the stage and everyone on it is a player. I don't know if anyone here studied Shakespeare. It's that William Shakespeare. And it just and you get so disconnected from your own spirituality when you're playing a role. But society, whether you're talking about the Krishna conscious society, these are all right. When you're talking about the Krishna conscious society, or any society, there's roles you have to play. You have to fit into a box, right? And it's just like, to me, it's so confining. It's like being in prison. And someone says, the sannyasi, you can't play the guitar. The sannyasi, you have to be more serious. I sometimes give a class, and some other devotee disciple Prabhupada says, you have to be more serious, Maharaj. You have to. There's a demand. You have to be more serious. And there's a diagnosis. You're unserious, or you're just like whatever you are. And so it's just like, help, I need to escape. You ever feel like that? That when you have to fit into a role, if you have a job, it's understandable. You got to fit in your role, but not the rest of the day. If your wife says that this is what you're supposed to do, that's what you're supposed to do, act properly as a husband. Ugh. Yeah. Personal experience. So we're spirit souls, we're dynamic. We're meant to be happy in Krishna consciousness. I'm not saying act outside of Krishna consciousness, but there's so much leeway for personal expression. You look at it, all of the acharyas, Prabhupada, they had their individual personalities. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, great intellectual, very heavy with his disciples. He was so heavy, he wouldn't let the residents of the ashram use the vehicles to go to the doctor. He was so heavy, only be used for preaching. And then you have Prabhupada, so lenient, his own personality. They're personalities. They're not like stereotypes. These different, right? Not like, what is it called? Cookie cutter. We just have to make cookies and you're just like, you know what a cookie cutter is? You have a mold or something, you go, they're all perfect and round. And so we have a guru cutter. And they put you through the mold, the guru committee on the GBC, okay. You all come out as little clones. Like anyone seen Star Wars? The clone army? Go, Okay. Like that. So, how, joy, to be joyful. And you look at these great devotees. I mean, look at my godbrothers, like Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He was a character, a good character. Diagnosis. I mean, I'm saying that because that means he was independent, he's expressing his needs. So even if I use these words sometimes, they're actually indicating someone who's doing something fulfilling the needs. But, all right, so he did things. He went to Africa, extremely successful. He dressed up in African garb. He had a cane. I don't know if any of you were around at that time. He had a cane with a lion's head, Nrsimha head on it. And he'd come to the GBC meeting with that cane. And a lot of the GBC would criticize, how can you do that? And we took a vote. Who votes that he have to give up the cane? Oh my God, not literally, but it was like that. And he was so pressured so much, he gave up that nice lion head cane. But because it was so cool. He would come to Mangalarti with a cane like that, lion head cane like that. And actually, I have to admit that I copied and got my own lion head cane with a smaller lion on it. His had a big lion on it. So look at someone like that, and has anyone here ever met him? He was my dear friend. I lived with him for years. And he was so dynamic, but there was so much pressure to conform. At one point, he was preaching to very, very important people in Washington, D.C. He had a center for applied spiritual technology called iFast. Everyone's heard of that before? Or some of you heard about that. I used to visit him, but it was so controversial for many people in the movement that they told me not to visit him. Yeah. Some of the other senior devotees, they said, don't visit him, he'll bewilder you. And he's my old friend. I lived with him for years. He and I had a great loving connection. And so I would go and stay with him and appreciate the preaching, loved his disciples and people there. They're just so wonderful. Particularly some of them I keep contact with, like Brajalila, some of you may know, Ekbira, Brajalila. And so, but extremely controversial in many ways, but so successful in his preaching in Africa. He became an African prince. And so many people chanting, people loved his chanting and dancing. He danced in a different way than everybody else. Has anybody seen? And he was different. But you run into that criticism. You don't fit into the mold. So, apart from sannyasis, we all have this mold, these expectations that people have us. That's a demand. Expectations are demands. I expect you, just like when I go back today, I expect dinner to be there at the right time. That's my demand. And if it's not there, no, it won't be like that. If it's not there, if it was a demand, I'd get really angry. Why isn't it ready now? I said 3:30. You want me to ever visit again? That would be a demand. But what will happen, I explained this before, is if it wasn't, there's a no, I don't feel like cooking. I said, all right, great. No, just go to the supermarket and get something. Must be a supermarket nearby. Can I borrow the car? Drive to the supermarket. And so but that's a nicer relationship because I'm respecting her integrity like that, and everything's done voluntarily. It's just great. Life should be like that. That we respect others' integrity, others' ability to choose not only the dreams and goals, but say that I don't feel well enough. I don't feel like it today. Okay, but it's your duty. You have to feel like it. Do you hear this sometimes? You have to feel like it. And you deserve to suffer. Krishna's going to punish you. Listen, we do this every day in our lives. And it's just like, it's so dissatisfying. Isn't it? Okay. Any other questions about this? Questions, comments before we... Wow. Time passes quickly when we're having a good time. So everybody understands the process of observations, feelings, needs, and as far as oneself, develop a strategy. This is the hard part. A strategy that doesn't conflict with any of the other needs that you're trying to fulfill. Okay? And then as far as others, once we've done that for ourselves, you know, the self-empathy, then we can think about others. Yeah. Mike.
Maharaj, my thoughts are going back to the conflicting needs.
Yeah.
And as I'm playing out certain situations or circumstances in my mind, it seems to me like, and I was wondering if you could speak to this before we have run out of time.
All right.
But if there's something you could speak around setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like, for example, if my need for autonomy is strong, right, that might conflict for my need for camaraderie and closeness, because it could happen in certain circumstances where they're conflicting. Or if I try a strategy that fulfills my need for autonomy, I will lose the closeness or camaraderie that and then so there's a way to maybe set boundaries.
Well, you have to understand how to do these things at the different times. You may not be able to do all those simultaneously. I mean, you can't rest and have fun and laugh at the same time, because you're not going to rest very well. So, that you just make time for each and everything. It's not that you have to do all these things 24 hours a day. But you set boundaries. Now I'm going to celebrate. That reminds me of a funny joke. Hopefully you forgive me for this. But anyway, once upon a time, there was a priest in the Catholic Church. You've heard this joke before. Who was studying the Bible and retranslating it from Greek into English. And he said he started crying. And they asked him, why are you crying? He said, the translation was not celibate, it's celebrate. Anyway, it's a joke. So we just have to time slice our life. There's a time for everything. Yes, I would think it would be impossible to try to fulfill all the needs simultaneously. I mean, you can't eat and rest at the same time. Does that make sense? This is common sense. Common sense. And we do have obligations, but do you remember how I said to perform our obligations? How do we do our obligations if we have some obligations? We have obligatory activities. Things that you do that how do you rephrase them in your mind? Anybody who remembers this teachings from yesterday or the day before? Choose to. I choose to. Not only I choose to, that's not enough. I choose to because I have a need. I'm choosing to work a job. Why am I choosing to work a job, work from 8 to 5 every day? Why? Yeah, I have a need for connection or protection of my family, even though that's not there. Protection of my family, these are all interdependent needs. Do I have a need for money? Does anyone here have a need for money? You have a need for money. No, you don't. Because money fulfills other needs. If I gave you gold instead of money, would you be happy? No, you could buy things with gold. It's worth more than money. It's inflation proof. Gold is inflation proof. It's actually better than money. So, because money helps you fulfill these needs, it's a strategy. It's a strategy to fulfill. Not all the needs. You can't buy love, obviously, or closeness, or community, or any of these things like that. But you can support your family, take care of your family. You can have fun. You can go on vacation, right? You can go to Gitanagari on vacation. Or you can go, I don't know where else you would go on vacation. You go to Hawaii? No, Fiji. Lake Michigan. You can go to Lake Michigan. If you have enough money. So anyway, I know it's close by. So it helps, it's a strategy to fulfill the needs. It's actually a useful strategy in many cases. And in other cases, it may not be a useful strategy. So we have to be able to identify the needs. So anyway, other questions before? Yeah.
My question is on the strategy, empathy for others, observation, others' feelings, needs, and then strategy. So when we are talking about the strategy, it's basically how to communicate to others about my own boundaries, how much I can do it, and then, maybe whatever they are expecting is more than what I can do. So
that's right.
Let them know.
Yeah, so the strategy may be to use empathic communication. It said that when you ask me, when you asked me to cook for you yesterday, I just felt a lot of anxiety because I have my homework to do. My car just broke down. So many things like that. Anxiety. I have a need for just release or something like that, or just some peace. Please, it's not about you. It's important to make that point. It's not about your request from me. But would you be willing to have me cook for you next week? Or something like that. Because it's important to explain your feelings, why you have these feelings. Not simply, when you ask me to cook for you, I feel anxiety. Would you be willing to forget about it? But it's really, that's your strategy too, to explain, that's part of the strategy, to explain your reason for it. And then people generally understand. But if you say your reason is you're just too demanding, you're just too pushy, then you're using that D of discommunication. You are pushy. And you deserve not to eat. So, yeah, it's a question of being vulnerable, because it's very hard for people to talk about their own emotions and actually reveal their emotions. It's easier just to say, say that you're always demanding things. You're just a pushy individual. It's easier to say that rather than to say, and it's hard for people to communicate their emotions. Yeah, it's extremely hard. Especially if you're a lady and talking to a man, because the man will diagnose you, you're emotional, right? Can I reveal my mind to you? Oh no, here we go again. So, the men have to learn the art of listening empathically. Because men generally tend to want to fix things. Like I gave that example the other day. You remember that?
Nail in the head.
The nail in the head. They keep wanting to fix things with the ladies, and the ladies just want connection and understanding. And even men need understanding sometimes. Once someone gets understood and connected with, then it's no longer a big problem anymore. Usually. Unless it's some physical problem or something like that. So that's the really important thing. If you explain your feelings, not your judgment. I feel like you are pushy. I feel that you are inconsiderate. I feel that, whatever, that's like or feel like that. You're judging the person, you're diagnosing the person, and it doesn't work with communication. But it's my responsibility. It's my feelings, and I feel like this, and that's my feelings. And usually that's a good way to deal with things. Like many times, people will criticize me because I have a vegan diet. And they'll say, they'll want to go into a whole argument because they're diagnosing me as being an infidel or whatever I am, for not drinking tons of milk and taking cheese and all the time and everything like that. And I will just be very vulnerable. I'll take it off the mental platform and tell them that basically I'll reveal my emotions. I said, it's not a philosophical thing, it's an emotional thing. Whenever I think of taking something that has been the source of pain to another living entity, I just freeze up. I can't feel, I just can't deal with it. I said, that's emotions. And on the emotional level, how can you argue with emotions? It's the best way to win an argument, right? Because emotion, especially like the ladies can win arguments with men all the time. This is emotional. How can he argue? I'm feeling, just like, even there's that story. What is this? Yeah, that is a woman's secret weapon. Crying. The men just can't deal with it. Isn't it? It's just like, oh my God, what do I do? What did I say? What did I do? What do you want? Krishna is more expert than that. There was that story in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita where Satyabhama is crying and she's pounding on the ground and crying and everything like that. And then what happens? Krishna comes and he says, get up. And he doesn't even call her by her name. He calls her Satyajiti, which means daughter of Satyajit. Get up. You're so foolish. I don't love you anyway. I only love the gopis, and the reason I got married to you, don't try that with your wife, but the reason I got married to you was because you remind me of my girlfriends. Don't try that with your wife. That's in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Anyone know that story? Anyone's read that story? So Krishna doesn't get fooled. Neither does Lord Ram, but Dasarath, he got fooled. Right? Because you had Kaikeyi, she was on the ground. Ah, what's wrong? You'll never understand. He said, I'll understand. I'll do anything. Really? That's a Ramayan story. And she says, I want Ram to be banished, my son Bharat to become king. And Ram to be banished for 14 years. And so Dasarath, he made that promise. So you got to be careful what promises you make, because you see someone being emotional. Instead, if your wife is like, You say, oh, are you feeling sad? Because you have a need to control me. No, that's serious. Don't do that. Say you have a need for understanding. And that really will diffuse the whole situation if you say, would you be willing to tell me? And that diffuses it. Because people's basic need is a need for connection. To me, that's the most important thing, to feel connected with other people. And connection is not, this is an interesting point, because I actually forgot to bring this out earlier. Connection with other people is not some mechanical thing. Now, you may be taught, if you attend a course in counseling, which I have, that if you're going to counsel someone, you should sit in a particular way, there's a particular posture. Don't do like this. Don't do like that. Half forward like that. Right? Isn't anyone's been taught that in counseling? Yeah, you have. Half forward like that. And look in their eyes. And it's not that. That's mechanical. It's a question of consciousness. I mean, I could connect to someone like, isn't it? So what are your feelings like? It's connection is the eye connection. It's not to, it's just the wrong thing to teach people, because then it's so stilted. Connection is when you're actually interested in someone. You're interested in their feelings and needs. It doesn't matter. You could stand on your head and be connected to someone. It's not a mechanical process. You really have to be interested in people. If anyone asks, what is my trick or technique or anything? Well, I don't have a technique or trick. I really like people, and I'm interested in people, and I'm interested to hear what people say, because I learn from people, because my needs are basically fulfilled. Not all of them at all times. Does that make sense? And that's really what people need. How many of us have deep relationships where we feel connected? Not very often. Even at the home, between the children, and how often do you connect with your children and try to understand them? And at the Sunday program today, we're going to talk specifically about children and raising children in Krishna consciousness, and particularly a thing called ABCDs. American born confused deshis. But really, you have to connect with them, understand their feelings and needs, because their strategies for fulfilling their feelings and for fulfilling their needs is completely different. Because they've learned different strategies than you all have learned, or than I have learned. So, oh my God, it's almost over. So any other questions or comments? Yes. This is just a brief introduction. I mean, I have a whole... We just went through the first, not even thoroughly, the first 9 pages in my teacher's manual, and my teacher's manual has 85 pages in it. So, and my book has a lot more pages in it than that. So if you're interested in more, you can get a copy of the book. It's also available on Amazon and Kindle, and we're not making money from it. This is not, to me, whatever. If you buy it on Amazon, I don't get anything from it. It's sold at price, at cost. Because I'm interested in communicating this understanding of human nature and connection. So, yeah.
I want to thank you. It's been for me, it's like a 4th time going through this training. And it really stuck to me, this today's session on the needs.
Yeah.
You said to see them, all of them together as a holistic,
Yeah.
that was really like, taking home. Even in the corporate world, there is something called 5 whys, when you're making a decision or something like that. So this is just perfectly fitting in. Want to express my thank you for that, Maharaj. And you already said it yesterday. Someone asked this already, but I want to ask it again. Like an example, during Srila Prabhupada time, someone was not offering obeisances, and Prabhupada said, you offer, then you feel like, then you will get into the mode. Or another example is, disciple means discipline. Discipline is prime. Could you please shed some light in relation with this to that?
Okay, so the example that we gave, or that was given the other day, was that a devotee didn't offer obeisances to Prabhupada because he didn't feel like offering obeisances to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, if you offer obeisances, eventually you'll develop a desire to offer obeisances, which is true. And so that's something like Vaidhi Bhakti. But it's not simply offering obeisances, but offering obeisances with a desire to develop a desire to offer obeisances. So if I'm just doing complete offering obeisance because I'm forced to, what do they say, bow down, mister? Hit the dirt. Like in the army, I don't know if anyone's here ever been in the army, but you got to salute. You could hate your commanding officer. You probably hate the person who's training you in the army. What's called the drill sergeant. Some of you may have seen movies about this stuff. And you probably hate him because he's yelling at you, but salute. Okay, you don't develop a desire to salute after a while. But you do it because you don't want to get in trouble. So, but if you do it with a desire to become Krishna conscious, or desire to develop a desire, then that's an intention. That's a sankalpa. So every activity we perform in devotional service should have some sankalpa connected to it. A reason for it. Why am I doing this? Otherwise it's niyam agraha. The same thing with chanting. It's not that we always feel a taste for chanting when we're chanting. But it's an obligation. I accept this obligation. Why? You put the why there. Because I want to connect to Krishna. There's that connection. Becoming Krishna conscious means connecting to Krishna. You understand? Serving the Guru means to connect to the Guru. It doesn't mean liberation or anything like that, although that may be your motive in the beginning. Krishna doesn't discourage that. But connection is really what we're all striving for. Like when you're in front of the deities, right? You want to connect to the deities. Right?
Thank you, Maharaj.
I mean, you may be asking for something, Krishna, Jaya Jagadisha Hari, Swami Jaya Jagadisha Hari, give me a house by the sea, Swami Jaya Jagadisha Hari, I need more money for me, Om Jaya Jagadisha Hari. I can think of a rhyme and a whole bunch of ones like that. Give me a Tesla for me, Om Jai Jagadisha Hari. Make my wife pleasing to me, Om Jai Jagadisha Hari. So, I'm not saying it's bad. Krishna says he understands that that's happening. But does that really satisfy the heart? Savai pumsam para bhaktarma yata bhakti haiksache. Ahitakeya pratyata yatma suprasidate. That what satisfies the heart is that connection with Krishna, the love for Krishna. That's connection. I want to please you, Krishna. If you really want to be connected with the deities, what can I do to please you? Like Prabhupada's idea to the spiritual master, what can I do to serve you? What can I do, which is pleasing? What can I do to serve you? What can I do to please you? And you see that we know Prabhupada was completely connected with his Guru Maharaj. So that's ultimately that need overrides everything else.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Another question, yeah.
Maharaj, it seems like conflict happens because of differing needs, and that's not realizing the differing needs.
Strategies.
Different strategies. So, okay, yes, and you were mentioning that. Okay. Now, you mentioned how in advanced devotees, what really touched me, you mentioned like Haridas Thakur, Prahlad Maharaj, their need is only, their biggest need is compassion for others.
Yeah.
So, would Krishna consciousness, one part of it be, you could say, elevating our needs, so that our need isn't so much in terms of the physical, becomes less, and then less in terms of mental, and it comes to that point of the greatest need in us is compassion?
Yeah, the greatest need is compassion and which is connected with pleasing Krishna, connection to Krishna. I would say connection to Krishna, and connected with that is compassion, but at the same time, one doesn't neglect other needs. All right, take Prabhupada's example, for example. It's interesting. Take Prabhupada's example, that Prabhupada had hours a day he was getting massages. If I were to do that, people would criticize me like anything. But Prabhupada kept a devotee, midday, before his bath and noon meal, maybe 45 minutes massage, and then at night before he took rest, a devotee had to climb on top of the bed with him and massage him until he took rest. And sometimes it went on for an hour. And then Prabhupada did so many things for his physical welfare. He took his morning walks. He never took his morning walks before he came to the United States, which is interesting. He was told to do that after his heart attack in New York. And it was an old Jewish doctor who came and said, "Swamiji, you chant too much." Yeah. That's what he said to Prabhupada. This is there, I think it's in the Lilamrita. "Swamiji is chanting too much." He said that to the other daughter. "Swamiji is chanting too much." He needs to exercise. So Prabhupada every morning religiously would go out and do his morning walk, and he would walk faster than any of us could walk. I remember going on morning walks with Prabhupada. I had to jog to keep up with Prabhupada. And this was on the beach, which is very hard with the sand and everything like that. And I was young man. And so Prabhupada did spend a lot of time taking care of his physical needs. He kept someone just to cook for him. If someone didn't make tasty prasadam, Prabhupada would just not take it. When I gave the example the other day when they just tried to feed Prabhupada boiled food. He said, let the starvation committee go to hell. Yeah, let the starvation committee go to hell. So Prabhupada was not neglectful of any of these things. Prabhupada was funny a lot. Anybody who was with Prabhupada personally would say Prabhupada told a lot of funny jokes. He would be telling these Gopal Band stories a lot. And some of them were really heavy stories, funny, really funny stories. So I don't see Prabhupada neglecting any of these things. Prabhupada had so much loving relationships with his individual devotees. Integrity. Prabhupada fulfilled all these to the highest degree. He's an acharya. He wasn't engaged in nirjana bhajan. Nirjana bhajan means you just go and you just know people and just chant. Prabhupada liked peace, inspiration, order, reciprocation, beauty. I would say that Prabhupada was a perfect person in fulfilling all these different needs, both physical, spiritual, mental needs, all these different needs. So pure devotee does not neglect them just in the need and in the mood of compassion. That is actually imbalanced and will lead to, possibly could lead to spiritual downfall. Like one of my godbrothers, for example, who had some trouble for some time, he came back, would be very much into distributing books and giving out, but he neglected his rounds. And ultimately it caught up with him. And then he had some trouble and he came back. Now he's enthusiastic and chanting nicely, everything like that. So basically when we say that overrides everything else, it doesn't really mean that one neglects those things. Prabhupada was extremely conscious of all those things. So, any other questions?
So, but would it mean reducing them? Like the Goswamis would sleep less, Prabhupada would sleep less? Because I'm just thinking, like in terms of my own mind, I could say I have a great need for peace, and you could say avoid service. Trick my mind into avoiding service because I have this need and I have that need and I have this need.
Yeah.
So how, what's my real need, or
well, you have
how do I elevate?
You have to prioritize your needs. Prioritize your needs, but you do have a need, but it's not all at the same time. That was the point I was making. That you have a time during the day for peace, which Prabhupada definitely had a time for his peace, but it also a time for really enthusiastic action during the day. We need a balanced life. Like Krishna says in the Gita, Nijahara viharasya, mityahara. So one who is a yogi has to be moderate in his eating and sleeping and recreation. That's right from the Bhagavad Gita. And then we take the history of Buddhism, where, the whole history of when Buddha first renounced the kingdom, he was very austere and he almost died. And then he realized that the middle path, not eating too much, not eating too little, not sleeping too much, not sleeping too little, same thing as the Gita. So we're moderate in these things and balanced at the right time of the day. That's Krishna consciousness. And that's the yoga system too. So balance your needs. Balance your needs, and then you could fulfill all of them, not all at the same time. I'm not going to rest in the middle of giving a seminar. I have a need for rest. I remember, this is funny. And we'll end with this. When I was a young devotee, I was given charge of 5 young boys who were dropped off by their parents in Gurukula. I was one of the first Gurukula teachers. I was good. So anyway, and so 24 hours a day. So obviously I didn't get enough rest because they would wake up at night crying and other reasons too. And so I'd be sitting giving class. I was their academic teacher, ashram teacher, everything, their mother, their father, 5 and 6-year-old boys. Really crazy. And I asked the children later, was I bad? They said, no, we loved you. Because I was so soft with them. I'd let them get away with everything, as everybody knows how I deal with children. So, but when I would be giving class, and I would fall asleep in giving class to them, I go, and one is like that. And they'd come up to me and say, teacher, wake up. So I wasn't fulfilling my need for rest. And also, when in the early days of the movement, when we drove a car, we only were taking like 4 or 5 hours of rest at night. So we would go to sleep at every red light. Every red light. Boop, boop. Okay, wake up. drive to the next red light. So, but it's a problem because many devotees got in car accidents for that reason. So it's important. Prabhupada was not fanatic. Prabhupada said, if you need more rest, people sometimes take some statements of Prabhupada out of context, where, for example, Prabhupada said, anyone who takes more than 6 hours of rest a night is in the mode of ignorance, or like that. And so everybody, regardless of their physical constitution, was forcing themselves to take too little rest. And we had people just like dropping, literally giving Bhagavatam class, and you'd hear a crash in the back of the temple room. Because the devotee would be standing up trying to stay awake, and he'd go, boom. And yeah, it's true. I mean, it was a common thing. And during japa, there was one devotee who was assigned with a spray bottle, because people would be nodding off, Hare Krishna, during japa, and just like you'd lift their face, keep them awake, because come on. Prabhupada was not fanatic like that. Prabhupada said, if you need it, take more rest. But people take these statements of Prabhupada out of context and misapply them, and then people are in denial of their own needs. And you find that a lot in spiritual life. People are in denial of their own needs. Or you have the brahmachari who's told to remain a brahmachari his whole life, and actually, he has a need to be married. So he's there, then he first joins the movement, Jai Jai, Hudi Bol, brahmacharis, women are Maya. This is ISKCON, in the old days. Not now. It is today. Where? So they're taught that, says this guy is Jai Jai, tough. Women are Maya, Maya Devi. And so the guy goes on like that. And then he's 40 years old, and he discovers he needs to be married. But how is he going to support a family at 40? So then he's 45, and he has 2 screaming kids. And he has to work a job, go back to college at 45 years of age, or something like that. And then do you know people like this? Or I know people like that. So then, he has 2 kids, and they've just been born or something like that. And so by the time they're 20, he's 65 years old. He's old enough to be their grandfather. So that's one of the things that results when people are not aware of their needs. And the poor guy should have been retired, having spiritual life full time, and he's still having to work. I have friends who are working at 70 because they just got their daughter married, and they had to take a second mortgage out on their house to pay for their daughter's marriage. I'm sure some of you heard about stuff like that. Older people who have daughters, somehow they got married when they were old. He's 70. And he's just had a bypass surgery. This is real life. And he's still working a job because he has this mortgage to pay off. So really, the point is, understand, it's the business of the leaders in the Christian conscious movement not to keep people working as long as possible. Free labor. It's good to have free servants, isn't it? You don't have to pay a salary or anything like that. It's great. Brahmacharis, whatever. But then you got to think of people's welfare. That's what I try to do. What's best for the person? Not what I need, but what's best for the person long term. That's how we should. A guru, temple president, leader should always be thinking of what's best for the person and facilitate them. Not simply engage them in serving, but facilitate them in doing what's best for themselves and their family. And that's how understand other people's needs. Otherwise, No one should be a leader unless they understand these basic needs and facilitate their own needs and also facilitate others' needs. That's the business. I mean, I see my position as guru to be a facilitator, not as a boss. You know, boss means, you're just thinking of your company. So don't we have to end? It's time to go. Thank you very much. And you're all welcome to get books. You're all welcome to keep in touch with me. You can see Sri Radhika, she knows how to get in touch with me. And please try to study this if you can. All these videos and more are available on my website, on YouTube site, sorry. Beer Krishna Goswami. That's YouTube channel. And they're all, there's different categories you can look up, like the seminar given in this place, the Gita Nagari 2019, what different seminars. And many of the seminars I went further into depth and we did more exercises. But, each and every time I give the seminar, I give it differently and I try to adjust to the situation, what's practical. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vaishnavas ki jai.
Let's all give a big Haribol to Maharaj. Haribol! 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 Maharaj, thank you so much for coming here and giving us your association. These are all priceless, nuggets of wisdom that I think are so important to have a healthy personal life and a healthy community, a healthy family life. So it's been really valuable. Huh? Yeah, I said family. Maybe not.
My family's the family of devotees. You're all my brothers and sisters.
Very well. So a few things. We have books, Maharaj's books here. Those who want to take a book and get his personal signature, you're welcome to. Yeah, you'll get his personal signature. There's lunch downstairs for those who are going to stay for lunch. We'd like to thank Shatarupa Mataji for cooking. Thank you so much. She's running away. And then we might need some help for tear down. So if you can help us tear down and put the chairs away. We need to put the chairs all the way to the back. All of these chairs go to the back of the room. That would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. I forgot to make the announcement. I think some people have left, but those who are interested to apply this on a daily basis, there's a weekly empathic communication support group that Sri Radhika, my wife, facilitates. So you can contact her if you'd like to join that. Hare Krishna.